Hi everyone. So carrying on our journey on the Trans-American Trail across America on our two little Himalayans. We've left Colorado and are going into Utah, which will then follow up as far as a state line with Idaho. So if I just flip this round and look at the map. Okay, so here's the map of the Trans-American Trail, and you can see my finger on the sort of state line between Colorado in green and Utah in purple. So the route is marked in red. So we basically go east to west right across Utah and then sort of parallel the Nevada state line with Utah all the way up to the northern boundary, where it then goes over the state line into Idaho. So that's the route we're taking. So we've just stopped at the state border between Colorado and Utah, heading into Utah. We're heading from here directly west, and our first port call will be a little town called Monticello. Well, morning everyone. We came into Utah yesterday and had our first sort of afternoon's riding, which ended in trying to get over a pass called Giza Pass, which turned out to be very, very steep, very sandy and very rocky. And with our bikes laden, it was basically, for us, impossible. So I suppose in the first half mile or so, I was down a couple of times and Pete was down once. And when we looked at the map, it was about 16 miles of the same terrain, so we thought the likelihood of either us or the bikes getting pretty seriously damaged was fairly high, so we thought we'd bail out. So we found a workaround, which was not a problem, and we've ended up camping here the night, which was great. And now we're going to head off towards Moab, which is a desert city famous for sort of desert sports and a big Jeep safari they hold every year. And we'll grab a coffee and crack on from there. So leaving the camp this morning, we've gone up into the sort of higher desert region, the canyon region in Utah, and it's absolutely fantastic. Hard riding, absolutely boiling hot. Hence, I'll show you little Peter. There we go, having a little bit of a breather with a gallon of water, but fantastic riding, absolutely unbelievable scenery. And I was getting a wet leg, but here we go. Look, point of interest. Whoops, one water bottle, and in fact, I've just thrown it all over the place, but you see the water sort of halfway up the straw. When I get to higher altitude, that sprays all over my leg. And asking Peter, because he's a technical sort of chap, he said it's because with a gas, volume times pressure, is that right? Is always constant. So as we come up to altitude, we're at about 5,000 feet at the moment. So the pressure of the air in the top of the bottle, this little bit, decreases. Therefore, the volume's got to increase. It can't go anywhere because the straw comes in at the bottom, can't compress the liquid, so the liquid comes out of the straw. So it's a kind of altimeter, albeit a bit inaccurate. But anyway, there we go. Every day's a school day. Onwards and upwards. And actually, sitting here having our little water break in the shade of a cave, I'll flip the camera around because I'm not a geologist, so Peter reckons this is water erosion from millions of years ago. But very, very cool sort of, whatever you call them, formations. Here, I'll flip it. It's amazing, isn't it? This is right at the top of a mountain. I assume it must be water because wind couldn't have done this, I don't think. You've got the striations in the rock from the different ages. And then you've got all these little kind of caverns that have been eroded by something. It's amazing. A third and final thing from this water stop, we're just looking out from our little cave and looking, as it turns out, east. So again, because we've been talking amongst ourselves, just saying how incredibly different each state is relatively quickly that you pass the state line. And I think this is probably quite a good example because we're looking east, so I think we must be looking at Colorado, the mountains with the snow at the top in the distance, mainly covered in woodland, and you can see the difference between those and then in the foreground, Utah and the desert. Such a difference. So it's 5 o'clock, time to be looking for somewhere to stop for the night. We've been riding some fantastic trails in the Utah desert today, and we're relatively near somewhere I think we can camp. But I just thought we'd stop and show you this stuff. We're actually at the top of a thing called Bottleneck Peak. Absolutely stunning. So if I give you a little bit of a walk round, that's the direction we're going to go in to find somewhere to camp. It's absolutely amazing. Absolutely nobody about anywhere. We've been riding now for probably an hour and a half. Absolutely no one. Have seen a bit of dust in the distance. I think it's probably possibly another bike. So it might catch them up if you find somewhere to camp. So we started riding off from our campsite in the desert last night, which was fantastic. The first bit we've come to is a place, in fact it's echoing as I speak, called Barrier Canyon, which is awesome, and it's got some artwork on the rock walls from about 2,000 years ago. So if I'll just cut this and then go and show you what they've got. So this is the first form of art, and it's called a petroglyph, which is where they kind of pecked the rock with a sharp implement to make the artwork. And the assumption is that this is a sheep. And this second form of artwork are called pictographs, where they actually painted the images. And I don't know if you can see these, but these are human figures. And you can see that where the heart should be, someone's intentionally sort of pecked the paint away from it. And one of the assumptions is that this was sort of someone being ritually killed. But anyway, all this artwork is from about 2,000 years ago. So very, very cool indeed. Well, I haven't got over the last obstacle, which we thought would probably be the last because we're quite near the summit. We've got, you can see my bike behind me, another snowdrift. They've obviously just not ploughing this this pass yet. So this might be the last obstacle, in which case we can probably get round it. Pete's gone for a walk off towards the summit to see whether or not, if we get over this one, we're probably free to go. Otherwise, it's a very long backtrack the way we came this morning, virtually the whole way. So we'll see if we can get over. So Pete's appraisal is he's not sure, but probably 80% chance of getting through. So we've manhandled the bikes, made a little runway, come through a field, made a little runway up to the road past the snowdrift, and then we'll head off, see how far we get. Well, unfortunately, I think the mountain has genuinely beaten us this time. We've got to the very top through all sorts of muck and rubbish. And if you can see behind me, Pete walking back towards his bike, which is up the hill. In front of him, we've literally just got to go over the top of the crest, and then we can rejoin the main road, or the main sort of gritted type of road that would then start the descent. But at that very last point, you've got probably a 10-foot deep snowdrift, covering probably 50 meters. And looking around, as you can see behind me, there's nothing. We're in a natural bowl, so everything up to the top is covered in snow and very steep, and we just wouldn't make it. So given the time, it's now 2:30 in the afternoon, and we're high altitude. Unfortunately, we've made the decision that the safest option, probably the only option, is to turn around, retrace our steps, and get back down lower, and hopefully to some sort of town. So off we go. And it was after all that when we turned round, we realised that I had a flat rear tyre. So after a hard day, it was wheel off, tube out, replace the tube, and do a roadside repair. Tyre back on, tyre inflated. So far so good. We're still pretty high, and it is 5:30, so we're going to hot tail it and see how far we get down the mountain. So having stayed at a town called Ephraim in Utah last night, and gave the bikes a bit of TLC, a bit of a spray wash, get rid of the caked on mud around the calipers, that sort of thing. We've come this morning up and over Timber Canyon, and we're basically heading pretty much directly west through, I think, a lot of very small trails today. If you don't see anything like the ones we've just done, fairly steep, very sandy and very hot, but very, very picturesque. So we'll crack on and see where we get to. Well, we're currently riding through Death Canyon on Death Canyon Road. Lovely place, as I'm sure you can see. It's very, very hot, very remote and very dry. So we're going to carry on from here. There's very little here. We're about, I reckon, halfway north-south in Utah, right over to the west, just about at the border with Nevada. As I say, there's not very much here. So we'll go on and see how far we get, because I suppose Death Canyon doesn't sound the ideal place for a wild camp, but we'll see how far we go. So after that little campsite last night, which we didn't have to have in Death Canyon, as we wanted to avoid that, and we had seen some little scorpions running across the road, so we found one just afterwards, so that was great. We've headed north through the desert again, on, as you can see, the old Pony Express route, which is basically a very long sort of sand and gravel track. We just passed Western Desert High School, which was weird because we'd probably done 100 miles pretty much since any sort of form of civilization up to it, and there's at least that to go carrying on that way, and it was quite a big school, so quite where the pupils came from I don't know. But anyway, we're heading up pretty much paralleling the Nevada border, further up towards ultimately the Idaho state border. Doing? Got your music going.
Yeah. You guys on the chat?
Sorry?
Are you on the chat?
Yeah, you?
Yeah.
So you're going the other way, are you?
Yeah. Yeah, we started in Cody, Wyoming, and we're going to end in Colorado.
So we're crossing the desert, seemingly kind of endless desert, to the west of Salt Lake, which is why we keep seeing salt flats. There's absolutely nothing about, no body, nothing, no infrastructure, and yet we've just randomly come to the end of our little track and found this brand new road, perfectly, I mean it's virtually wet tarmac, going as far as the eye can see that way. And as far as the eye can see that way, nothing on it. Seems a bit odd. Anyway, hey ho, we'll use it. So we've packed up our little camp that we made last night on the shores of the Great Salt Lake behind me. Smashing little campsite. So we're right at the very northern tip of the Great North Lake, the Great Salt Lake, and Salt Lake City is right at the southern end, just to sort of give us some perspective. So we're gonna ride sort of across the tip of the lake now, and then turn north towards the state line with Idaho, the state that we're going into next. One slight issue this morning is we've woken up to me having another flat rear tyre. Don't know when we picked the puncture up. We're hoping that it's gone down overnight and that it was a slow puncture, So we're going to give it a blast of air and see how far we get towards a town which looks as if it's about 50 odd miles away. So let's hope it lasts. So I managed to get a new inner tube for my bike for a rear tyre in a town nearby, and then we've cracked on from there, and we're now at the border, the state line between Utah and Idaho, and it is in fact this big road behind me is actually the state border. So Utah's been great, really challenging, incredibly diverse scenery and climate. We've enjoyed it immensely, but that's the end of our time in Utah, and we'll now cross over and go into Idaho.